Hello and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here. If you're the kind of person who loves taking complex, real-world issues and breaking them down into clear, easy-to-grasp concepts, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today we're unpacking a highly debated economic policy proposal that's been making some serious headlines over in the UK. Now, just a quick reminder right off the bat, we are looking purely at the macroeconomic analysis provided by our source material. We're not here to take any political sides at all. Our goal is strictly to map out the economic logic and the critiques presented so you can see exactly how these policy ideas actually function on a national scale. Let's get right into it.
So, our starting point today is a major political proposal put forward by Robert Jenrick and Reform UK. The core of their argument is pretty straightforward. They claim that Britain fundamentally has a welfare problem. And to solve this, the proposal suggests taking a huge number of people, literally up to 3 million individuals who are currently on sickness and disability benefits, off of those safety nets and pushing them directly into the workforce. The political logic here is that removing these financial cushions will effectively force people to look for work, thereby solving what they view as a heavy over-reliance on the state.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this is exactly where our source introduces a massive central tension. While the political argument zeroes in on the behavior of individual people, the macroeconomic critique asks one very simple, highly pragmatic question. But where are the jobs? Our source points out that encouraging or even forcing someone to look for work doesn't magically generate a real job for them to actually do. This single question flips our entire perspective. We stop looking at individual welfare claimants and we start looking at the overall capacity of the economy itself. To really wrap our heads around this debate, we need a clear roadmap. We're going to start by looking at the benefit cut proposal itself. Then we'll check out the job shortage reality, introduce the Bank of England factor, trace out a potential economic chain reaction, and finally, we'll wrap up with some big unanswered policy questions.
All right, moving right along to the first piece of the puzzle, the benefit cut proposal, and how it's being framed politically.
This comparison brilliantly illustrates the fundamental disconnect at the heart of today's explainer. On one side, you have the political claim, right? It's hyper-focused on the individual. The idea is simply that there are way too many people claiming benefits. But on the flip side, the source offers a really sharp macroeconomic critique. The UK doesn't have a welfare problem, it has an employment problem. According to this analysis, politicians are basically confusing individual circumstances with economy-wide structural employment dynamics. Blaming people for not finding jobs assumes that the jobs are actually out there just waiting to be filled. But as we'll see, are they really? And that brings us to our second point, the job shortage reality. Let's look at the hard data. The source grounds its entire critique in this absolutely crucial number, 5%. That's the current general unemployment rate in the UK. Now, to put that into perspective, that means 1 out of every 20 people in the UK who actively want a job and are out there currently looking for one simply cannot get one. And here's the kicker. This 5% figure generally doesn't even include many of the people currently receiving the sickness and disability benefits that this new proposal is targeting. So we already have a very real, significant chunk of the active labor force unable to find work before a single policy change is even made.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how stark the contrast is when you break the data down. While general unemployment sits at 5%, youth unemployment is currently running at over 10%, literally double the national average. And the source points out that at the exact same time unemployment is trending up, job vacancies are actively falling, which, as you probably know, is a classic warning sign of an economy heading toward a recession. So think about it. This proposal wants to drop up to 3 million more job seekers into a labor market that's already struggling big time to absorb its young people.
Listen, if you only take one single statistic away from this explainer, make it this one right here, 2.5. According to the source material, there are currently 2.5 unemployed people competing for every single open job vacancy in the UK economy. 2.5 people for one job? When you visualize that, the source's critique becomes crystal clear, doesn't it? If there are already more than twice as many seekers as there are actual jobs, forcing millions more off benefits and into the job hunt line, it doesn't create employment. It just creates a much, much longer line.
Let's zoom out a bit for our third point, the Bank of England factor. Because you really can't talk about job availability without looking at the broader economic environment.
The source argues that politicians completely ignore a massive concept called demand suppression. Right now, the Bank of England is pursuing a high interest rate policy. And guys, this is not an accident. It is a deliberate mechanism. By jacking up interest rates, the central bank is actively trying to reduce disposable income, constrain how much everyday people are buying, and discourage businesses from investing. The intended goal, of course, is to tackle inflation. But the direct, unavoidable consequence? It deliberately weakens the demand for labor. I mean, businesses simply aren't going to hire new workers if everyday consumers don't have the cash to buy their products. Makes sense, right? So the crucial takeaway here is this massive, glaring policy contradiction that our source identifies. You've got two forces pulling in completely opposite directions. On one hand, the Bank of England, which is a major arm of the state, is actively suppressing the creation of jobs to cool down the economy. But on the very same hand, you have politicians demanding that millions of benefit claimants immediately go out and find jobs. The source argues that without a major shift in macroeconomic policy to stimulate demand, threatening people's incomes is just going to fail. Because you are literally ordering people to find something that the state is actively trying to destroy. All of this leads us right into the fourth piece, an economic chain reaction. Our source leans heavily into Keynesian macroeconomic theory here, the classic idea that an economy absolutely must generate demand for labor before jobs are actually offered. Let's move to and see how this builds step by step into what the source calls an outright austerity spiral. Step 1. The policy goes through and benefits are cut for millions of people. Step 2. Those targeted individuals immediately lose their income. And because they have way less money in their pockets, Step 3 kicks in. Local spending drops significantly. The local shops, the services, they all start making less money. That naturally leads to Step 4. Overall business demand weakens. And when businesses are facing weaker demand, Step 5 is practically inevitable. They don't hire, in fact, they might even start laying people off. So, the source's analysis is that cutting benefits in a weak economy doesn't get people into work at all. It actually destroys the very jobs those people are supposed to be applying for, tipping the whole economy into a much deeper recession. Finally, we reach our last section, the unanswered policy questions. Let's look at the major logistical hurdles. The source fires off these intense, really practical questions that they argue are just totally ignored by the politicians pushing these cuts. Think about it. If you force millions to look for work, where will these jobs physically be located? What are they going to pay? Are we just talking minimum wage in hostile environments? Realistically, how many new jobs does the government honestly think the current economy can generate, while the central bank is actively suppressing demand? And critically, how on earth do deep government spending cuts magically stimulate more employment? According to our source, the proponents of this policy haven't even acknowledged that these questions exist, let alone tried to actually answer them. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought from the source material. It's a question that pretty much sums up everything we've looked at today. Now, getting people into work who want to work, that is a perfectly reasonable objective. But can you solve an employment problem by simply adding more job seekers to the queue? The macroeconomic analysis we explored today suggests absolutely not. Threatening incomes doesn't create opportunities. It destroys them. I really hope this explainer has given you a powerful new framework for looking at these kinds of economic policy debates. It's never just about individual behavior, right? It's always about the math of the whole system. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this. Keep asking those hard questions and keep learning.